Story 1. Getting saved after a near-fatal injury and being kept alive completely paralyzed in a hospital bed for years. Story 2. The slow death where you are trapped in your own body, unable to move and therefore unable to call for help. Story 3. You know the death of Giovanni Ribisi's character in Saving Private Ryan? The moment when he realizes he is going to die and feels helpless and frightened, wanting his mother because he is far from home. That death terrifies me. Story 4. Slow. It is one of the things that has helped me fight against suicidal thoughts, the fear that I might fail and be unable to lead a normal life, making the mental fog worse. Story 5. Any death that doesn't come before being consumed by dementia or Alzheimer's disease terrifies me. I am afraid of death, but I am even more afraid of losing my mind. I will spend my entire life hoping that this does not happen to me, especially now that I am witnessing people endure it in my own life. These are not just stories I am hearing. Story 6. Being eaten, especially alive, by a bear, shark, anaconda, wolf, or similar animal creeps me out. Story 7. Terminal illness is terrifying to think about. The awareness of dying and being unable to do anything but watch your body slowly fail is overwhelming. If I were ever diagnosed with a terminal illness, I would prefer to take my own life rather than let the illness take it. Story 8. Perhaps the scariest situation involves individuals who have sustained severe injuries, particularly to the pelvis or abdomen. I saw a man who was completely separated from his lower body, trying to crawl in extreme pain, while bystanders recorded the scene with their phones. It was a traffic accident in India where he slid under a large wagon. I believe being fatally injured in such a manner is truly horrifying. Some of the events occurring in Ukraine involving phosphorus or similar munitions are shocking and dangerous. They can burn through surfaces. I can understand why some individuals may choose an easier way out, but it is concerning that many seem trapped for hours. I witnessed one man whose eye and face were significantly harmed. Although his eyes were still moving, his face was severely damaged, fragmented into multiple pieces. The resilience of the human body is astonishing, yet it is frightening to witness such suffering. Story 9. Physician here. My biggest fear is having a fulfilled, independent life with an advance directive stating that I do not want cardiopulmonary resuscitation and having everything arranged for a natural death. I worry that my children might become scared at the last moment and provide me with chest compressions, which could break my ribs, lead to the insertion of a chest tube and intubation, and potentially require restraints because I might be scared and delirious. This could escalate to the use of pressors due to becoming seriously ill, resulting in the loss of toes and ischemic bowel due to the pressors. I could end up undergoing an exploratory laparotomy for ischemic bowel, eventually needing a percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy tube for feeding because of the ischemic bowel or laparotomy, resulting in pressure ulcers and osteomyelitis due to immobility, before ultimately going into multi-organ system failure and dying. This scenario occurs every day in medium-sized hospitals across the United States. Story 10. Hospitalized for months. I can sense that the people around me have started to dislike taking care of me. I pray for sleep and for death. Story 11. Anything where I can't breathe is something I strongly dislike. Unfortunately, I believe that is the case for most deaths. Story 12. I have always been afraid of being crushed to death in a crowd. Falling to the floor and getting suffocated while hundreds step all over you is a terrifying thought. No, thank you. Story 13. The idea of falling through ice and being unable to find my way back to the surface terrifies me. Story 14. A sudden, bloody, grisly death is like suddenly getting sucked into a wood chipper while feeding it or getting caught in a running jet turbine. Story 15. Cancer. Receiving the news that you have a year to live. Undergoing treatments that prolong life but do not cure the disease. Understanding that your time is limited, yet unsure of when the end will come. Facing the overwhelming dread as the end approaches. Feeling helpless to change it. Constantly feeling unwell, with chemotherapy treatments several times a week in hopes of gaining a few more weeks with loved ones. It is truly terrifying, painful, and miserable. Anyone who endures this is incredibly brave and deserves the utmost respect. They are true warriors. Story 16. Trapped in a small space, suffocating from either compression or loss of air. Explosions, burning alive. Being eaten by an animal, like that woman who called someone and they could hear her being eaten. That disturbed me for a moment. Also, experiencing death from hypothermia. What a terrifying thought. Story 17. Getting eaten by bears is a terrifying prospect. They do not always kill their prey before they start to consume it. Witnessing a bear holding a man down and pulling strips of him off, much like pulling apart string cheese, sparked an unforgettable fear within me. A slow, lingering death due to illness or injury frightens me, especially the thought of depending on others for care. I refuse to let that happen. Story 18. Drowning is known to be extremely painful, especially in the ocean, where you may find yourself sinking deeper into cold, unrecognizable darkness, possibly losing consciousness. Or even worse, falling from a great height and sustaining severe injuries without dying immediately, leaving you to endure prolonged agony. Story 19. Death by cannibalism would be slow. Sometimes I watch a bug being eaten alive by a wasp, and I swear I hear screams. Story 20. Burning to death would be unbearable for a short time until it ceased. I have experienced being on fire before and spent time in a burn unit at the hospital. I was badly burned, but not nearly as severely as others there. I honestly don't think I could endure anything worse than what I experienced, which terrifies me. Story 21. Fire. I have been severely burned twice, with the second degree almost reaching the third. It was incredibly painful. Story 22. Drowning is apparently worse than burning. The water enters your brain and affects your entire body. With burning, once the nerves are damaged, the pain stops. Story 23. Suddenly dying alone. I was there when my mother and my wife died 3 years apart. I knew it was coming and made my peace with them. But when someone suddenly dies in a car accident, it is a traumatic shock for everyone involved. Story 24. I think all the standard scary deaths scare me. Being set on fire, being buried underground and suffocating, having all my skin peeled off starting at the toes, etc. In the end, I have no fear of dying, but I do fear being in immense pain. Story 25. I mean, all of them. It's in our nature to be afraid of any upcoming death. If I had to choose a particularly scary death, it would be slowly losing yourself to Alzheimer's disease. Story 26. Burning alive and being eaten alive by anything sounds unbearable. I would prefer to take a bullet, crash, or experience anything else besides those two. Story 27. Dying in the ocean is terrifying. The fact that you are helpless in a medium your body isn't designed to survive and adds to the fear. Swimming in the deep blue sea with no one around is one of the scariest experiences. There is no hope of swimming to safety, and the unknown in the water is daunting. The temperature can freeze a swimmer almost immediately, creating a struggle filled with fear and desperation. Story 28. Anything violent, such as an attack, drowning, burning, or falling, is terrifying. Crashes, whether by car or plane, also fall into this category. I suppose any death that is not natural is frightening. Story 29. Pretty much anywhere death is an instant and unexpected. However, the ones that scare me the most are death by blood loss, especially concerning the neck or heart damage, suffocation, drowning, being crushed to death, choking, being buried alive, and burning to death. Story 30. Something like bleeding out, where your life is slowly slipping away and you are desperately fighting to retain consciousness and stay alive. I did have nightmares to that degree. Story 31. Being 105, everyone I know is gone. No one cares. I feel old and unwell, stuck in bed, in pain, and death won't come. Story 32. Those individuals who enjoy crawling through small tunnels and caves often find themselves stuck permanently. I have no interest in such activities. Story 33. Being trapped, such as being buried alive, stuck in a tunnel, on a bridge, in an airplane, in a spaceship, or in a submersible. Story 34. Dying of thirst. At age 12, I was kidnapped by a stranger for 3 days. Water was withheld, too. I am over 60 and still keep filled water bottles around the house. Story 35. Death by chimpanzee. Getting eaten by a lion or a shark would be horrible, but at least it is just an animal acting on instinct. A chimpanzee is a smart creature that can deliberately choose to hurt you. Story 36. The slow death from cancer scares me. Knowing you are dying and people trying to be brave around you is difficult. I dislike long goodbyes. It isn't the pain of cancer that frightens me, but the prolonged roller coaster of emotions. Story 37. A death before I have achieved everything I dream of. A death before I stand on solid ground in my life. I want to achieve at least that in my life before I die. Story 38. Dementia. The idea of slowly losing your memories and abilities, ultimately not being yourself, is terrifying. It starts gradually with small moments of forgetfulness, which is also frightening. Story 39. Death itself doesn't scare me. However, I watched my uncle die of sepsis, and that is not a death I would want. Story 40. An instantaneous experience, like being shot in the head by an unseen attacker. I want to know that I am dying. Story 41. Frankly, dying in your sleep may seem peaceful, but the thought that it could happen at any time is scary. Story 42. A slow cancer death. Both my grandfather on my father's side and my grandmother on my mother's side died slowly from cancer, one from prostate cancer that spread to the brain and the other from throat cancer. If I am going to die of cancer, I would prefer to go quickly, like my husband's older sister who just died last week from colon and liver cancer. She was diagnosed in December with stage 4 colon cancer and in February with liver cancer. After being placed on hospice care, she was gone just 4 days after returning home. Story 43. My aunt was a completely healthy 72-year-old with a clean bill of health, and then suddenly, during lockdown, she lost consciousness. She went to the accident and emergency department, and they said nothing was wrong, so they sent her home after spending the night there. The next day, she fell in and out of consciousness in her sleep and passed away. Story 44. You are trapped in your technology, stalked and forced into involuntary servitude, tired and emotionally disconnected. They keep changing your technology, as reported by the Department of Justice. You are aware of individuals involved in human trafficking trying to manipulate you. You have witnessed them set people up to exploit others, and you cannot communicate normally using social media apps. It seems the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been infiltrated or compromised by the sports industry. You have constant journalists and media presence around you, but you feel you cannot talk about it. Your attempts to find some sense of normalcy through the internet lead either to nothing or to someone promoting infidelity. You are starved for friendship and feel lonely. Your entire existence is a non-stop fight or flight state of shock with no help. You cannot just drive away. You are bullied online at 41 years old, and they expect you to start riding a bike after having driven a vehicle your entire life until your car was hacked by stalkers. You feel as if you have already fallen dead. Story 45. I ride motorcycles and I live in New Zealand where people drive as if they are the only ones on the road. I am getting married soon, and having children will be inevitable. I have regular nightmares, so it might be time to sell. Story 46. Drowning in a tight space has always bothered me. I'm not afraid of dying slowly, but I would not want to go that way. Story 47. A slow realization when you understand you are dying, and you have a moment to think about it. Story 48. Getting hit by a driver and getting lodged in their windshield is a tragic situation. Leaving someone to die in a garage. Yes, it happened. Story 49. A slow, drawn-out terminal illness where my friends and family watch me die and cannot do anything about it, while they also have to endure my loss as I am still alive. Story 50. The lonely one. That's really it. I just want one final hug, a final embrace, a final kiss goodnight. Story 51. Being eaten by something and enduring horrendous agony while it savages you and tears you apart. Thankfully, most predators tend to deliver a killing blow so they can eat in peace. Story 52. The unexpected kind. Aneurysm, heart attack, fatal car accident, anything like that. One moment you are going about life, enjoying the sun. The next, you are gone. It is extremely frightening. Story 53. I fear being kidnapped or something. and that someone might kill me. Perhaps it's due to watching too many crime shows and hearing about missing people. The experiences that some individuals have gone through and how many of them end up as murder cases scare me. Story 54. Those underwater welders were trapped in the oil pipe for days. If you're drowning or burning, the horror of death preoccupies your mind. It is awful and painful, but it will end in minutes. These men had to lie there, conscious and thinking about whether they were going to be rescued. For days, they slowly dehydrated and occasionally slept, only to wake up and realize the nightmare was still unfolding, accepting the reality that nobody was coming to save them. Story 55. Drowning. The moment you realize you cannot reach the surface, your lungs burning as they plead for air, but all that remains is water. Panic sets in, your limbs thrash, but every movement feels weaker than the last. Then comes the worst part, the moment your body forces you to inhale, and instead of oxygen, your lungs fill with liquid. Everything fades to black, and you slip away in silence. Story 56. Dementia runs in my family, and my dad and I have a pact. When the time comes, do what you need to do. Story 57. Drowning, suffocating, or that situation where air enters the veins. I know that last one is very specific, but I can't even watch it happen on television. It scares me so much. Story 58. In a hospital, I don't want to die in a hospital bed. I want to go out on my own terms, skydiving. I am scared of heights, but the view must be great. Story 59. I have experienced both drowning and choking multiple times. I nearly drowned when my dad let me sink to the bottom of the pool when I was 8. He eventually pulled me up, but I couldn't swim at the time. I also choked on a German bacon ham that had a strip of hard-to-chew fat, and I had to reach down my throat to pull it out. The pressure of feeling your breath slip away and the inability to speak or ask for help are incredibly frightening. Story 60. Outliving my lungs or my mind in any wasting condition is a harsh reality. I live in Utah, where there are no laws for death with dignity. People are expected to endure starvation or dehydration in the face of any wasting or degenerative condition, which is truly horrific and barbaric. Story 61. A slow, painful experience. I watched my grandfather slowly deteriorate from colon cancer and its treatment. Years of chemotherapy and radiation took a toll on him. He lost so much weight and couldn't care for himself. Eventually, the radiation caused his internal organs to fuse together. He began vomiting stool and bile. He chose to enter hospice and he passed away shortly after. A few years later, his sister died from the same illness. My grandfather-in-law also died similarly, as did a friend of my husband. I am 31 years old and have already been screened for colon cancer. I am not taking any chances with it. Story 62. The slow moments where you suffer from thirst or hunger after being trapped for days or weeks are agonizing. Knowing you are going to die and just waiting as the pain intensifies is unbearable, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Story 63. One possibility I know is coming is a long, prolonged death from cancer or being in a serious accident that doesn't kill me immediately. I would prefer not to know when it arrives. Story 64. Unfortunately, I don't know if death scares me anymore. I've seen it too often. Pain is just a state of mind to me, so not even a painful death sounds bad. Story 65. I know people often say they want things to be quick and unexpected, as if they don't have to worry about it. However, my most irrational fear is that someone would approach and harm me before I have a chance to react or find any resolution to the situation. I haven't given anyone a reason to do so yet, but one can never be certain. I attribute this fear to David Chase. Story 66. I feel overwhelmed by the thought of being severely harmed on camera and then becoming paralyzed. The idea of having dementia so severe that I forget how to breathe, or being diagnosed with a chronic illness that is certain to lead to death, is unbearable. If I ever experience those events or discover that I have dementia, I would consider taking my own life. Story 67. That person who got stuck headfirst down a dead end in a cave. Poor individual, nobody deserves that. It ties into my fear of small oubliettes. Story 68. Skull crushed. The idea of the pressure before being squished like a melon and my entire face exploding sounds quite unpleasant. Story 69. Being trapped in a sinking boat or burning to death. I believe these experiences may reflect how I died in past lives. It always gives me a shiver to think about it. Story 70. For my death. A sadistic one that takes forever to complete the task. For anyone else. Any death that happened too soon and was not wanted. Grandpa tired of his heart condition and ready to pass? Not scary. Let's make you comfortable, Pa. Someone suicidal, not making this decision out of haste. Heading to Switzerland after getting their affairs in order? If there is nothing else I can do for you, mate, let's make you comfortable. I got you. Your life, your rules. Not scary. A child exhausted from chemotherapy who wants to be done, knowing they are going to pass? Let them be. Not scary. Injured to the point of, please do not resuscitate? Not scary. We make you comfortable. I have been there. I was once injured to the point of needing medical intervention. After recovering and processing it mentally, I changed my end-of-life instructions to, do not ever wake me from death again. I love my life and am happy to be alive, but that was the rudest awakening ever. I hate it. However, any death that is essentially not the choice of the person is scary. Story 71. Me dying doesn't scare me. What terrifies me is dying with small children. I can't leave them with a mortgage and credit card bills. Story 72. Dying like that cave diver who got stuck upside down for 2 days while people were trying to rescue him would be excruciating. The trickle of hope followed by the eventual acceptance of death is anxiety-inducing. Just reading the story and seeing the depiction causes me distress. Story 73. Stabbing, drowning, fire, and how my sister died from a brainstem stroke that left her with locked-in syndrome, meaning she was completely physically paralyzed while being fully mentally aware. Her sole communication was through blinking once for yes and twice for no. She was only 42 when she died. Story 74. At the hands of another person, fire, drowning, and other such occurrences are horrible. However, another human being intentionally taking my life and enjoying it seems the most awful. Story 75. Being mistakenly buried alive and slowly dying in your coffin is a horrifying fate. In the past, it was common to mistakenly assume individuals were dead and bury those who were merely unconscious or in a coma. There have been several instances where old coffins were opened, revealing nail marks everywhere. If that is not the worst way to go, I don't know what is. Story 76. Any death that places your survival instinct against your conscious will to live involves inhaling water when drowning, drinking seawater when dying of thirst, and removing your clothes when dying of hypothermia. Story 77. Incurable yet slow cancer. Although it's better with the medical assistance in dying now. I watched my dad die slowly and painfully from pancreatic cancer 25 years ago. Story 78. Anything I can anticipate, such as falling from a great height or seeing a car approaching me at high speeds. Story 79. Anytime I watch USS Indianapolis, starring Nick Cage, I feel overwhelmed by the image of the prisoners on the ship drowning in their cells. It's a terrible way to go, and it's difficult not to feel disturbed thinking about how people have died like that. Story 80. Getting cooked alive in an industrial oven has happened to people, and the thought gives me shivers. Story 81. A man became trapped in a cave for days. Rescuers were present to help him, but they could not free him in time. The slow torment of being unable to move and lacking hope for rescue haunts me. Story 82. Dying with people who never contribute. Dying with a God who never shows up. Dying surrounded by people or workers who want to claim your insurance or your will. Story 83. Rotting in a state retirement home on the verge of being shut down, possibly suffering from dementia or even lucid and wheelchair-bound. I volunteered at one a while back, and it was grim. There was an atmosphere of deep depression and hopelessness, only heightened by the clutter and general uncleanliness. I will never forget you, Konstantinos, playing professional soccer, serving in the Greek military, immigrating to the United States, and remaining happily married for decades, only to die forgotten in one of Pennsylvania's worst care facilities. Story 84. Burning to death is a horrific experience. If the smoke doesn't kill you first, your lungs and throat will endure excruciating pain. Your death will be painful in ways most of us cannot comprehend, with no release until you succumb to the heat and flames. No, thank you. Story 85. Living to an age when I may have Alzheimer's or dementia, or experiencing a prolonged death due to a stroke or heart attack is not something I desire. I want to avoid a death that subjects me and my loved ones to pain. Story 86. My cousin drowned. It is one of my biggest fears. It must have been so scary. I often think about how he felt, as it is not a quick death. Story 87. I was about to say it was a very painful disease, but after reading comments, I realized there were much scarier things, such as being paralyzed, being buried alive, or even being kidnapped. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.